Look at this. Look at all these word books that I read this month. I did it, Papa. I've become an educated man. You know, I bet you he doesn't even watch any of these videos. I mean, just look around. He's probably terrified. Hello, all of my otaku friends. My name is Prof Otaku, and welcome back to my channel for my January 2023 manga reading log. I not only read 65 volumes this month, but I read 16 new series. Am I a martyr for the cause? There was some good, there was some bad. Let's talk about it. And as always, before we get started with the video, no spoilers. I will never tell you what specifically happens in a volume. If it's a new series, I just want to tell you some characteristics about it. If it's a drop series, why did I drop it? And if it's an ongoing series, do I like the direction that it's going in? This first section here is going to go over all the new series that I tried this month, and these first 6 volumes were manga sent to me from Yen Press in the month of December to try out. So the volumes that we have here are The Boxer, From the Red Fog, Shy, The World's Strongest Rearguard, So What's Wrong with Being Reborn as a Goblin, and Mons Taboo. Now y'all have seen all the covers already, so just in the back of your head think, which one did Prof Otaku like the best? Alright, now that you have in your head, I'm going to show you the #1 read from that stack of manga, and believe it or not, if you guessed this, kudos to you. It was So What's Wrong with Being Reborn as a Goblin. So this series follows a guy who gets hit by Truck-kun, he dies and he gets reincarnated as a goblin in this goblin village. What I really enjoy about it is that it's a really unique and interesting world. The MC is super smart, and the way that he's able to use all his different abilities and his ways of managing this goblin village are really quite interesting, and it's really enjoyable to read. The whole world setup is quite interesting. There's a lot of things to explore in here. I really enjoyed this. Underrated isekai in the conglomerate of isekai, but yes, this does get the Prof Otaku stamp of approval. The second most enjoyable read out of this 6 is actually Mons Taboo. This series follows a girl who starts dating this monster, and she lives in this world where adults who are kind of shunned or isolated from society just turn into these weird looking monster things. So the whole shtick of this manga is that you have these monsters who are shunned adults from society, and they prey on young people to destroy their lives before they get started. And honestly, I really like that concept. It's super interesting. The action sequences are done very well. There's a lot of cool lore in this world, and I really want to explore more. They present a very nice package of lore near the end of the first volume that makes you want to go ahead and buy the second volume. The only weird thing about this first volume is the MC and this kind of relationship dynamic between the MC and the first monster that we encounter. It's unnecessary. It's an age gap, but the monster adult doesn't reciprocate this romantic relationship. So if love age gap relationships kind of bother you, maybe this one isn't for you, but I just kind of ignored it. I just like put it in the back of my head because I can just get over that if it means that everything else is pretty good. So yeah, another wacky, crazy manga that I just had a lot of fun with. I just didn't take it too seriously, and I think that's why I enjoyed it a lot. In the third place spot, we have The Boxer. This is from the same author who did The Horizon, which is a spring release that's going to be happening this year from Ise Press. So obviously this is a boxing manga, and in the first volume I can describe it as all action and not a lot of substance. We get presented to our main cast of characters in this story and their ambitions and a little bit of their backstory, but the majority of it is just guys beating the crap out of each other. And yeah, it's drawn very well and the art is fantastic in full color, but honestly it got kind of old after a while, and I was like, okay, I just need a little bit more from this first volume to get myself invested into the characters and the story. Not the greatest first volume. I'm honestly going to keep going with this because of the author's other work, The Horizon. He's an expert storyteller, so I'm just really banking on that. Next up here is Shy, the superhero manga that everybody was talking about. And look, there are some definitive problems with this manga. Honestly, everything about it is actually pretty cool. You got the superheroes, which may seem kind of standard, but it's pretty unique with our MC being super shy. Then you got all the different superheroes around the world. But my issue with this manga was actually the way that the world was presented, the conflict of this world and how that conflict gets resolved. I honestly thought it was super tacky, super corny, and I just couldn't buy into it, and it really turned me off from the rest of the first volume. Now that being said, the art is great. I am invested into the cast of characters. I'm interested to see how this keeps going with the antagonist side. It's not that interesting to me just yet. So yeah, a surprising first volume. I thought this was going to be my #1 favorite read, and yeah, it's actually in the bottom half. In the 5th spot, we have The World's Strongest Rearguard. It's an isekai series about this guy who dies and then he gets reincarnated into this fantasy world. He chooses a job where he is the rear guard of a party. He basically acts as a support system. He's supporting the other members of his team, and so his abilities are justified as such. It's a fine isekai, nothing to write home about. I don't really care about the MC or the other characters. They're nothing special at all. The only redeeming quality in this manga are actually the different powers that our MC gets. I think they're really cool. I can't wait to see how they're explored in the 2nd volume, but other than that, it's kind of cookie cutter, to be honest with you, so I can't recommend this one just because there's nothing special here. And last but not least, in the last place, I know, there had to be one, and that was From the Red Fog. So this manga follows a boy who is trapped underground by his mother, and throughout his childhood, he's forced to kill all these different people. Eventually, he's able to escape, and thus starts his journey going around this countryside doing serial killer things. That's basically what this first volume encompassed. There was an expanding part of the story that got introduced at the end of the first volume that will help open this world up into what like the main premise is, but basically this first volume was episodic, us following our main character as he does serial killer things. Honestly, it wasn't my favorite thing in the world. Yeah, the art is pretty good, but it just kind of got old really fast. I couldn't get invested into the main character because he does seem really shallow and just kind of one tone. Maybe that gets changed later on, but I don't know about this one personally. However, I do know that a lot of people do like this manga, so if you are intrigued by a darker series, then yeah, this one's for you. All right, now we're moving on to the crutch of my month, which was spent reading one series, volumes 1 to 12 of Gakuen Babysitters. Now, Gakuen Babysitters is a shoujo manga not released in English physically, so all I could read were the scans of the manga. There's only like 20 volumes scanned, 102 chapters, so I'm continuing my way through it in the month of January. However, I don't think we'll ever see an English release of this. There is a very popular anime that I do highly recommend. Now, if you haven't figured out from the title of the video, this manga shocked me beyond belief. It is in my top 5 manga of all time and is my #1 slice of life series that I've ever read. Now, here's why. The episodes are continuously evolving. They're super interesting, and they're all very different. We have a phenomenal cast of characters, and there's such depth in our main characters too. And even though it's a slice of life series, there's some beautiful life lessons to be learned, some really emotional, impactful moments because it follows our MC and his little brother. Their parents died in a plane accident, so then they go to live with this grandma, Obi-san. Her son also died in the same plane accident, so she's like, okay, I'll go ahead and take you guys in because you have no parents anymore. But the whole shtick is that the main character has to run the babysitter club, and so he's in charge of the 5 toddlers who are in there. I just couldn't stop laughing, which with a slice of life series is really what makes this a true 10 out of 10 masterpiece for me. I loved every single episode. I love the baby characters. They are so well done. They all have different personalities. They're absolutely adorable, and it just makes my heart like really kind of like tight, and I'm not sure why. Do I have baby fever? But for someone who really advocates for slice of life, it's probably my favorite genre in all of manga. For me to say that this is my #1 slice of life series is a really huge statement. Personally, for me, I highly recommend you check out the manga on the scans or the anime. You're not going to regret it. Now, another shoujo series that I read, flipped on the other side, we have Lovesick Ellie, volumes 1 to 12 complete. I actually read all of it on scans. I wanted to try out the series, but then what happened was I read each volume and I was like, oh, okay, I'll try another volume. I'm still not sure if I'm going to buy it yet. And I tried another volume and I tried another volume, and it basically went on a volume by volume basis until I finished the whole thing. It's a simple shoujo series. It follows follows a girl who's kind of a pervert and she has lots of fantasies. She has a Twitter where she tweets out all these fantasies, and then she falls head over heels for the most popular beautiful boy in the school, and thus starts their relationship. Yada yada yada, kissy kissy kissy. Honestly, the whole shtick with her perverted side, there are glimpses of it where it really shows through, and it's a lot of fun. Is what makes this series unique, but it kind of deviates from that, especially near the middle of the series, and I wish that it really zoned in on that because that's what made this series special. Another big issue that I had with this manga was the direction of some of the arcs. I did not like the introduction of some characters. I didn't like the way that the arcs were developing. It really kind of contradicted the whole vibe of the manga, and especially the direction of where our main characters were going. So yeah, it really kind of turned me off from this series, putting it above a 7. It got a 6.5 out of 10 for me. It was fine, not something I would necessarily buy and put in my collection, but it's a nice fluffy high school romance. Next up is a series that I finished even though I really didn't want to finish it, and that was A School Frozen in Time volumes 1 to 4. I read it and I was able to send it off. I did it in a trade with somebody. I got Mario Kart 8, and honestly I think I definitely won on that because this series was not good. So this story follows a group of 8 kids who get locked up in a school as they try to figure out the death of one of their friends from a couple months ago. So it's a mystery series, but the biggest problem with this was the mystery. You know, the whole point of a mystery series is to be able to read it and make predictions on your own and then be surprised if they happen or they don't happen. But the problem with this series is that you have the mystery, you're going along, you're like, oh, I wonder if it's this, I wonder if it's this, and then you turn the page and then the manga just introduces a new concept, and that's the shtick, and you're like, there's no way I could have guessed that because I didn't know anything about this until literally this page. So it takes all the fun out of this whole read. The cast of characters are forgettable at best. Basically, if I can make an analogy, it's like picking up a manga series on a whim just because it's a good price. You put it on your shelf and then you forget about it for like 4 years. The art is done by the mangaka who did Your Lie in April, and that's why a lot of people bought this series. But man, the art sucked. The character design was pretty boring, and the backgrounds and the whole world just seemed really bland and boring and dull, and I was like, that was why I picked this up. Obviously, I didn't like this series. I think I gave it like a 4 or a 3 out of 10. It's probably one of the lowest rated series I've ever given when reading manga. I am glad that it's out of my collection. Flipping the table onto a critically acclaimed series, I read the first volume of Yona of the Dawn, and I did a read-along sprint with Marguerite's Manga and Shay Geeks Out. I'll link a little video so that you can check it out. I love this volume 1. I get why it's critically acclaimed. I think everything about this manga is super well done from a world building perspective, from a main character perspective. You can see a lot of potential with both our main characters, Hawk and Yona. The political aspect is what gets a lot of people in this. They think, oh, it's a little bit too politically heavy, and that's why they don't want to read the series. But let me just tell you, as someone who doesn't read a lot of shoujo and got into this series just cold turkey, I do not think it's overwhelming. I think it's presented very well. There's lots of different palettes and tones in this manga that help break that up, and I think that this first volume is one of the best first volumes I ever read. The flow of the paneling and the art are expertly done. I absolutely love the way that they do all the different action scenes, but then also the chibi style drawings too. It's a fantastic work of art, and honestly, I'm probably going to pick up an art book from this series. I love this first volume. I will continue to do this read along with Shay Geeks Out and Izzy and Marguerite's Manga. It's a lot of fun. I hope that you can join us. Next up here, I went to the bookstore, I sat down on the ground, and I saw 17 to 21 Before Chainsaw Man by Tatsuki Fujimoto, and I was like, well, I don't really like Chainsaw Man. I think we all know this on the channel, and I was like, well, I might as well just go ahead and read it. I'm here. So I sat in the corner of the bookstore, I read it, and I actually really liked it. There's 4 different short stories in there, and they're all pretty different. And what I like about it is that it's just absolutely insane. Every story is really unique and really funny and really action-packed, and it makes you think because there's some philosophical side to it, or maybe there's not a philosophical side to it because he does say that in the author's notes. But I just like that I went into this with no expectations of it being good at all, and I really, really enjoyed it. I actually really like Tatsuki Fujimoto's other one-shot that's been released in English stylish look back, so I'm super excited for Goodbye Eerie. Maybe I like his one-shots more than his actually longer running series Chainsaw Man. I'm sorry, okay? But yeah, I'll probably end up picking this up for my collection at some point in the next couple of months, just so that I have a physical copy. Here we are with a new light novel series I started this month, Bofree. I don't want to get hurt, so I'll max out my defense. I read volumes 1 to 3, so I'm almost caught up with it, so I'm about halfway. I'll read the other half this month, but I love this light novel series. You know, it gives me the vibes of Vending Machine Kun. I really wanted to read a fantasy isekai light novel that was super turn your brain off, super simple sentence structure, really easy to follow, nice imagery, really unique world, really cool power system. That's a lot of fun, and this definitely didn't disappoint. I can finish each volume in about 2 hours, which is really satisfying. I love the main characters. I love the pacing of this manga, of this light novel, and how it continues to speed up, and every single volume has several different events going on. It's not necessarily a deep light novel, so don't look inside yourself for some special meaning. It's just this girl playing a video game, but it's very well done. I highly recommend it if you're looking for something super fun. Next up for the new series, I tried The Remarried Empress Volume 1 from Ize Press, a new manhwa. And this manhwa basically follows this woman on the cover. She's married to the emperor. They have issues with their marriage, and they've been friends since childhood. She ends up leaving the marriage and getting remarried to the emperor of the other country, and then we take a step back and we go into why this was happening. This definitely gives me vibes of daytime soap opera, so if that's your cup of tea, I say go for it. I like these type of manhwa. I don't really like the action things like Solo Leveling or The World After the Fall, so this is definitely something I wanted to pick up and try. Our main character is really interesting. I like her whole dynamic. I like her inner monologues. They're super interesting, but what I don't like about this manhwa are the side characters. I really don't like the mistress, to the point where like she really turns me off from even trying to read the rest of the series, because I just hate everything she stands for. And I get it, that's the whole point. We're supposed to hate her, but man, like I really hate her, and I know Suki Notes also really hates her too, so it also turned her off from the series. I had the same exact opinion, so you know, take it with a grain of salt though, because that's what this whole series is trying to do. It was a lot of fun. I will definitely give it a second volume. And the last series I gave the good old 1-2 try was Eminence in Shadow, the manga. So I read volumes 1 to 3, and it basically follows this boy who wants to be an eminence in shadow. He wants to be the background character. He doesn't want any attention to himself, but like in secret he wants to be like super powerful and just nobody knows about it. He gets isekai'd obviously into this fantasy world, and he continues to be an eminence in shadow, and he makes up this whole story about this cult and all the different things about this cult and this whole conspiracy theory, and he's just making it up. But the whole shtick of this manga is that it's all coming true, and he just doesn't even realize it. And so with that being said, it is super funny. The world building in here is really good because this whole made up story is really fascinating. The MC is great. He doesn't take himself too seriously, and I really enjoy that. I love the artwork too. The artwork really puts everything into pictures with the imagery. The jokes land pretty well because we get to see the face gags going on, which is great. And of course it does flow really fast, which I heard that the light novel takes more of an inner monologue type of thing, and I just didn't want that with this type of series, so I'm glad I went with the manga because it's a very good adaptation. I'm thoroughly enjoying it, so yes, I highly recommend this fantasy isekai series. I really like this. This next section are going to go into the series that I actually dropped from my collection. I read it and I was like, nope, I don't want it. First up, we have Yona and the Haunted Hot Springs Volume 5. I read that 5th volume. It was good, don't get me wrong, but I just knew going forward in my manga collection that I was like, I don't need this physically. With it being like a 22 volume series, I could already get the vibe that I was going to get sick of this series by volume 11. It was just going to be episodic and kind of the same old shtick, so I was like, I'm going to let it go. I'm not necessarily dropping the series. I may go ahead and read this later on online, but at least for right now, it wasn't worth me collecting physically. So the next volume 1 that I tried, I said, you know what, I'm just probably not going to collect this, and I have to read this because there's no way I'm going to memorize it. Backstabbed in a Bad backwater dungeon. My party tried to kill me, but thanks to an infinite gacha, I got level 9999 friends and am out for revenge. We live in a fallen world. This basically follows a human boy who's with a party of fantasy characters. They backstab him and kill him because he's like the weakest one. He gets reborn and he's got this gacha power where he can like summon a bunch of like super powerful things. And that's the whole shtick, and he's out for revenge. I thought this was going to be something I would really enjoy, and the world setup was pretty cool, but as I continued through the whole first volume, the pacing was just god awful. It was so slow, so much dialogue, not enough action, and that's not what this series needed at all, because the whole shtick of this manga is already kind of meh, but like this just took it to another level of that I just didn't want. So yeah, if the title intrigues you, sure, pick it up for funsies, but yes, I took the martyr for the cause here, okay? I tried it, I didn't like it, and I returned it. And the last series that I dropped was Uncle from Another World. I tried volumes 1 to 3. It follows an uncle who gets sent back to the real world from a fantasy world after 17 years, and it's him getting acclimated back to modern society. I don't know about this series. I think that the comedy was kind of 50-50 here. Some of the comedy wasn't that funny to me, and it felt like two different stories. We had the whole shtick with video games. The uncle really likes video games, older video games like Sega and all that stuff. But then you have this other side where there's this like fantasy element because he came from this fantasy world, and this whole story about that. And it basically felt like two different stories, and they were trying to combine them together, and it just didn't work. The art is pretty rough to say the least. I did not like the character design at all whatsoever, and it tried to be weirdly sexual, and it just didn't need to be honest with you. It's also an episodic manga, which I didn't expect, so in 3 volumes, I didn't feel like there was any direction to this story, which is why I dropped it, because with a fantasy isekai series, that's not really what I want right now. So yeah, those are my qualms with it. I mean, yes, this is a very popular series for many people, and maybe the anime does it better, but honestly for me it's not what I want right now. But don't let that deter you from trying out the series, because it does have a pretty decent rating on my anime list. This last section here are all the ongoing things that I read this month, either to completion or to its up-to-date volume. First up, we have a series that I started last month that I finished this month, a very highly anticipated series that I wanted to read, and that was Twin Speaka. So I read volumes 9 to 16, and I thoroughly enjoyed the second half much more than the first half. All the qualms that I had with the first half, with there being unexplained things, not a lot of science-y stuff, a lot of that gets fixed in the second half. There's some fantastic twists and turns that made me go, oh my goodness, this is absolutely insane. And the ending is a very, very satisfying ending to all parties, and it's really cool to see the character development that happened in the second half of the series, because that's what made this series special for many people. There's lots of great life lessons to be had in this manga about following your dreams, supporting your friends. I will continue to have this manga in my collection. I can't wait to reread it because it's a very special manga, and I'm super glad to have grabbed this for such a great price. Here we are with 3 shonen series that I'm continuing to read. We have Mission Yozakura Family Volume 2, we have Sakamoto Days Volume 5, and we have Komono Jihen Volume 3. The same things that I've talked about with all 3 of these series continue to happen with this. I really enjoy the characters, I enjoy the story. That's why I will continue to pick up the shonen series. I have a very fine line of what I like with my shonen manga, and these 3 provide that for me, which is why I will continue to read them. Another thing that I should say about all 3 of these manga is that they're very light-hearted shonen series, which I seem to gravitate more towards in my shonen reading. Dark battle shonen series like Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man are really not my cup of tea, which is why I don't really like them. So I like that this makes me laugh, and it's very action-packed. Next up, I read this at the bookstore, and I didn't pick it up, but I am planning on picking up the second volume very soon. Miss Miyazan Would Like to Get Closer to You Volume 2. I love this whole cute delinquent and this really cute girl trying to become friends, and maybe more than that. I think it's very well done. It is episodic. The artwork is simple, but the character design is great. It's a lot of fun and a rom-com series that I will probably keep in my collection. Next up, I continued with Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt. I only read 2 volumes this month, volumes 8 and 9, because this finished up an arc, and these 2 volumes made me totally buy into this series. This arc and these 2 volumes put all the different puzzle pieces together, which was my whole big issue with the series before this, was that it was really confusing to follow, but now we get why everything is the way that it is. I really enjoy it. The action was the best it ever was. It was like watching a movie. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to know what happens next. So I'm super invested into this story. I'm super invested into the two different sides of this war, and I cannot wait to see what the rest of the series brings. I plan on reading the rest of the series in the month of February. Only a few more things left in this reading log. We have Blood on the Tracks, Volume 12 from Shuzo Ishimi. Oh my gosh. I mean, this series is just absolutely nuts. If you're looking to get into Blood on the Tracks, perfect time to do it, because volumes 1 to 12 finish up this like humongous arc, basically the prologue, because that's what Shuzo Ishimi said. He said volume 13 starts the actual Blood on the Tracks, which blows my mind because volumes 1 to 12 were absolutely insane. And he's like, oh yeah, that's just like the little sprinkling on top of this cake. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is one of the most messed up manga that I've ever read, but it's like rubbernecking on the freeway. You just have to look at the accident and you're like, oh my god. And last up for the manga side of things, I read the Yakuza's Guide to Babysitting Volume 4. This kind of brought things back to the main thing being the main thing, which is the children and also our main Yakuza guy character here, but we also get a lot of character development from him too, which is really cool. We like to see it, so that's what makes this slice of life series very good, and that's why I highly recommend it. And for those of you who stuck all the way to the end, we're going to do a little special thing. We're going to go over the novel that I read by R.F. Kuang, Babel. This is a very hot book, and I picked it up because of the cover, because the cover looks super sick, and it basically follows this Chinese boy whose mother dies. He lives in Canton, which is a very bad part of China. Everybody's getting sick, and this man comes, he heals him with this silver bar and takes him overseas to England, specifically Oxford, where he enrolls as a translator for the Babel building. But of course, as our main character Robin goes through his schooling becoming a translator, there's a lot of different dark political things going on behind the scenes, and it follows Robin as he tries to decipher what's going on in Oxford and all the different crazy conspiracies. It was a fantastic read. The only issue I had with this book was that the first half was paced a little bit too slow for my liking, so it's a little hard for people to get into. Lots of language and linguistic terminology, and it got a little bit too heavy-handed at the beginning, but the second half of this series was phenomenal. All these different puzzle pieces came together. It just absolutely exploded. I couldn't put the book down. I read it for like 5 hours straight to finish it out, and it was so much fun. This book has many different themes: colonialism, racism, fighting for your own integrity as a foreigner or a minority in a whitewashed culture. And this book also goes into this dilemma of right and wrong. How do we enhance the world as a whole, but also keep the integrity and the prosperity of our own independent country? This book made me really proud as a Chinese American because the main character is Chinese and like what he stands for the Chinese people. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can get behind that. I really do appreciate the message that this book was trying to portray. It was a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. Even if you're not a book reader, it is pretty heavy-handed. So if you get a little tired of it, I totally get it if you end up dropping it. But if you stick with it, you'll be rewarded with a phenomenal story that will make you just stay up all night and go, what did I just read? And that is it for my January 2023 manga reading log. I hope that you enjoyed. Thanks for sticking with me to the end if you made it this far. Got a lot of fun videos planned for February. I can't wait. As always, if you enjoy my videos, please hit that like button, tap that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you know when more of my videos come out, and I will see you in the next one. Take care now. Bye-bye.